Hi. Welcome back to the series where I recommend child-free by choice romance books to you. Still don't have a shorter name for this series at all. This video is special because we are focusing on a specific subgenre that I think a lot of us love to read, and that is small town romances. Now, if there's one thing about small town romances, they love to procreate. It makes sense. Small towns are known for being very family oriented. They have a lot of tight-knit, close communities in small towns. A lot of the businesses are family owned and have survived through generations through the family name. So it only makes sense that they need to keep those legacies going. As someone who is an avid romance reader and has read a lot of small town romances, 98% of those romances have ended with marriage and babies. These books are the 2% that don't. Well, marriage, yes, but babies, no. It is very rare to find a child-free couple or characters in a small town romance. In small towns, it is a bit more ostracizing, I guess, and isolating to be a child-free by choice person when you are surrounded by that sort of community and that mindset for so long. Now, I will say that when it comes to small town romances, there is a huge lack of diversity in this subgenre, and even in the small town romances that I have read, there are hardly any characters of color or queer characters or marginalized characters at all. So if you guys have any recommendations for small town romances written by authors of color, queer authors, please leave me some recommendations, because small town and cowboy romances are predominantly by white authors. So I'd love to read more diversely in this subgenre if you guys have any recommendations. Anyway, that was a very long ramble into small town romances, but we are here to discuss the small town romance books that have child-free by choice couples and characters that stay child-free for the rest of the book, which we love to see. And as always, I will have some honorable mentions and then go over the conversations or scenes in the books where the characters talk about not wanting kids, deciding not to have kids together, so that you know what you're getting into when you read these books. I should also make a disclaimer that the books that I like to include in these videos are not child-free in general, in the way that there aren't children mentioned. They are child-free by choice. So the characters do specifically say that they are child-free. The first honorable mention I have is Dust Storm by Maggie Gates. This got picked up to be traditionally published. I don't know if it's going to be the end of this year or next year, or maybe it's already out. I have not paid attention. This obviously takes place on a small town at a ranch, and it follows a group of brothers or siblings, I believe. This is the first book, Dust Storm. I will say this is my favorite out of the three. This is an honorable mention because the female main character is explicitly child-free. She does not want kids. She actually isn't even really a fan of kids. But the male main character has two girls. This is a single dad romance with a child-free by choice character. It is a romance between Christian and Cassandra. Christian is the eldest brother on this ranch. Their family business is failing and they really need to turn things around in order to make some profit and keep the ranch going. As the eldest brother and the head of the business, he is scrambling to try and figure out what to do. And on top of that, he is taking care of two kids. And then Cassandra works for, I believe, a marketing or PR firm, and she messes up a deal that she was working on. And as sort of a punishment, her company sends her to work on Christian's ranch and turn that business around as sort of a trial period to see if she's able to handle that and then continue working again. She does not want to go to this ranch. She is a big city career woman and is absolutely against working on a ranch and small town farm life. She is not a fan at all. I remember when she first arrives at the ranch, she's wearing 6-inch stiletto heels in the grass, and she's sinking in the grass and all this stuff. Everyone that's at the ranch is just like, who is this woman? She is iconic, I will say. I absolutely adore her. She's very prickly, very stubborn. A lot of the people on the ranch definitely have no problem telling Christian that they think she has a stick up her ass. And again, she does not like children. She's not a fan of children. So when she's interacting with Christian's kids, she treats them almost like adults and does not sugarcoat anything to them, does not really baby them. She tells them what she's thinking, what she's feeling without any filter at all. At first it is a bit off-putting, but then you see the way that the girls fall in love with her. They form a huge respect for her. They even Once they start dating, they even joke calling her their evil stepmother. But it's really fun. I definitely know that this is not going to be for everyone, and a lot of people are not going to like Cassandra because of the way that she talks to the kids and the way that she is around the kids. Just her character, she's very unlikable, and I totally understand, giving very much Meredith Blake. However, I consider Meredith Blake to be iconic, okay? I love her. She is very unapologetic about who she is, and I really admire that about her. There is no bullshit with her. She is who you see is who you get. I loved her, but I know she's not going to be for everyone, so take that with a grain of salt, okay? She is very upfront with Christian, though, saying that she doesn't want kids. She doesn't like kids. She has no intention of ever having kids. And the fact that he does have kids is a bit of an issue because she has admitted that she is not interested in becoming a stepmother. She doesn't want to be a parent to his kids. It wouldn't be fair for her to step in as that role when she, you know, doesn't want to be that. I love the conversation that they have because he tells her, you know, I'm not looking for someone to step in as their stepmother. I am not looking for someone to come in and be their mom. I am both of those for them. And on top of that, I have a great community. I have my family. They have their aunts, their uncles, my parents. Like, they have their village around them to help raise these kids. Christian tells her, I'm looking for a partner for myself. I want someone that's going to be my partner, my companion, the person that's going to be there for me when I have to be there for my girls and everyone else. That is obviously something that she really appreciates and respects about him, that, you know, he knows that she doesn't want kids and he's not looking for more, and he's not looking for her to step into a role that she doesn't want. So I really love that about this book. And like I said, this is my favorite in the series. If you want a really spunky, badass career woman and a hot rancher dad, Dust Storm by Maggie Gates. The next honorable mention I have is Futures Entwined by Ayla Asher. This is actually very similar to Dust Storm in that the female main character does not want kids at all, but the male main character has 2 girls. Okay, this is literally the same. Heather is actually from the small town that this story takes place in, but she left. She was the popular mean girl back in high school, and so everyone in that community kind of hates her. This is, I think, the 6th book in the series, and all of the characters in the previous books have a history with Heather, so she's very, very unliked in this book. She marries her high school boyfriend, very unhappy, and gets divorced. And I don't remember if she leaves while they were married or leaves after they were married, but she leaves the small town. And then Jeremy, who is the hero of the story, he is a author and he moves to the small town to write his next book. He's kind of getting inspiration for it. At this small town, he actually loves the area and loves the small town charm, and he moves there again with his 2 girls. Heather comes back, I forget why, but she comes back and they end up being neighbors. And it's clear that from the get-go they have a lot of chemistry together. They end up interacting with the same friend group, and some of the people in that, specifically the girls, know who she is and had interacted with her in high school. Heather had a lot of making up to do, and I don't want to say she's a reformed bad girl, but she definitely does her best to make amends with everyone and has changed a lot from the person that she was. It's the same sort of setup as Duststorm, where she tells him she doesn't want kids and she has no plans on having her own. But I really liked her relationship with his kids because it was sweet. She had a very sweet relationship with Jeremy's kids. Jeremy told her that he wasn't looking for anyone to step into the role of a stepmom or a mother for his kids. He just wanted a partner for himself. So in that regard, it was sort of the same setup and ending as Duststorm. If you are looking for a, I guess, mean girl redemption arc and a really sweet cinnamon roll hero with 2 little cute kids, then you will find that in Futures Entwined by Ayla Asher. Yeah, the next honorable mention that I have for you is Chasing the Wild by Elliot Rose. This one is a dark, taboo, small town romance. So if you're not into dark romances, you can skip this. But if you are looking for a dark, taboo, small town romance, I definitely would say check this out. Super spicy. This story is about Layla, who is trying to get her degree to be a veterinarian, and she is definitely struggling to make ends meet because it is not cheap to be any type of doctor in any medical field. And she's also paying for assisted living to the care of someone that she's really close to. Layla has just broken up with her ex-boyfriend, who was a piece of shit. He was total trash, and he left all of his stuff at her place. And so she goes and drives all the way to his small town of Crimson Ridge which is where this small town series takes place, to drop all of his stuff off. Along the way there, she stops at a gas station and has a very brief encounter with an older guy that is filled with tension, and there's flirting going on, but she has no idea who she is and is like, I'm probably never gonna see this guy again. She then continues on to the house of her ex-boyfriend, and it turns out it's this huge, very modern looking cabin all the way at the top of this mountain. She goes off to drop his stuff off. She knocks on the door, and who opens it? The older guy from the gas station. And it turns out that that guy is her ex-boyfriend's dad. So I think you can already tell where this taboo story is going, but it is a romance between Layla and her ex-boyfriend's dad, and his name is Colton Wilder. Have you ever heard of a hotter name than Colton Wilder? Because I haven't. No, I have not. Anyway, so after she drops that shit off, she's like, okay, I gotta leave. That can't happen, right? And then a few years later, people are calling her phone, blowing up her phone and saying she owes all of this money. And it turns out her piece of shit ex took out loans under her name. If she wasn't in debt before, babe, she definitely is now. She makes the trek back to Crimson Ridge. And mind you, again, this is a few years later, knocks on the door and is like, what the fuck? Why are you taking out all these loans under my name? I don't have that money. And again, who's there but Colton? Not her ex-boyfriend, his dad. A huge snowstorm hits and she's stranded up in that house, in that huge cabin with his dad for a few weeks. She's trapped there. She has nowhere to go, but he makes sure that she has a very comfy stay. I did think that this was a little bit long for what it was, but I really enjoyed it. I also too love that the author went into detail onto what life is like on an isolated ranch like this, because I believe Colton also has a business there. I forget what it is, but he has a business that he's running too. Very hot, very spicy, very taboo. I mean, obviously this is an honorable mention because Colton does have a kid, and that just so happens to be her ex-boyfriend. They actually don't even have a conversation about not wanting kids together, but in her inner monologue, Layla does talk about why she does not want to be a mom. She has no desire to be a mother, doesn't ever want to have kids. And Colton didn't want children at all to begin with, but he was really, really young, and his ex didn't want to give the baby up, so they ended up having a kid, but he really didn't want kids in general, so he has no plans to have more. If you want a dark, taboo, small town romance on a isolated ranch, read Chasing the Wild by Elliot Rose. Okay, now we get into the recommendations after all of those honorable mentions. The first recommendation I have is Gold Rush by Jenny Bunting. This is part of the Finch family series. This obviously takes place in a small town, and we follow Reed, who is one of the brothers, and Whitney, who happens to have been Reed's college rival. So it's a bit of a rivals to lovers romance, but Whitney is an aspiring writer, and she moves to Reed's small town to write her next book. She's trying to get inspiration for her next book, and she moves to this small town because she thinks it will help her with the sort of setting that she's writing her next book in. And Reed's there, obviously, and when they first meet, it's very don't even breathe in my direction, but the more that they end up interacting with each other, the closer that they get, and they realize like, oh, I don't think I hate you as much as I thought I did. These two really push each other and bring the best out in one another. It is so sweet, especially because Reed is trying to help Whitney write her book, and she's a romance author. He gives her scenarios, he helps her out with the scenarios, he reads her writing, he reads her book, and it's so sweet. I really loved their relationship. Now, the best part about this is that Whitney is very, very, very adamant that she doesn't want kids. And she knows that because Reed comes from a very big family, small town community, that he most likely does want kids because all of his siblings want kids or are having kids. His mom wants grandbabies. She already knows that she's on the outside looking in and can tell that he's going down that road as well. So she upfront tells him, this isn't going to work out because I don't want kids. And I know that's probably going to be in your future one day. What I love most about this book is that Reed does think that he wants kids in the beginning because he grew up in that small town environment and everyone around him is having kids and getting married and settling down. And he thinks that that's the next path for him. But he realizes after hearing Whitney, why she doesn't want kids, her mentality behind it, he realizes, oh, maybe I just want kids because that's always what I've been told and what I've seen around me, but he never actually took the time to think about whether or not he actually does want kids, or if it's because that's what everyone else is doing. And throughout this book, you follow him on a journey of trying to figure that out. He talks to his friends, he talks to his family about this decision, tries to get their opinions, talks it out with them. He really does the work to make that decision. And I love that because you never see that in romance books at all. You never see the journey of a character trying to figure out if they actually want or don't want kids, you know, and actively doing the work in themselves and figuring out if it's really something that they thought about and intentionally want for their life. I loved that we followed Reed on this journey because I think it's very relatable to a lot of people, especially if you are on the fence of whether or not you want to have kids. I think it's great to have that representation in this book of a character that is going through that as they are falling in love with someone who knows that they don't want kids. He really tries to talk to as many people as he can, his friends, his family, to get all the different experiences that they've had to understand whether or not he is ready or wants to become a parent. And in the end, he realizes he doesn't want to have kids, and he loves Whitney so much that he's perfectly happy with living the life that they both want just with each other. You can see I have a lot of screenshots here. There were so many conversations that I feel were necessary and very important to the characters and their stories that resonate with me, and I think with a lot of people that are debating whether or not they want kids. Now that I'm looking through this, I don't think I'm going to go through every single screenshot because this is a lot, but I am going to try and highlight the ones that I think really capture what you're going to get when you go into this book. In her inner monologue, Whitney says, "I decided to never have children when I was 16. My friends constantly talked about what they would name their children, but I was only interested in naming characters in my stories. Having an absent mother was just part of it. I never felt a maternal urge. Babies are fine. I never want to hold them, and I only ever want to interact with children for 15 minutes tops." Real. As my friends dropped like pregnant flies, I grew more and more sure of my decision. The fact that Reed willingly hangs out with children and acts as a father figure to one is attractive. Yes, but it makes me pause. I've been down that road before, trusting Brad when he said he didn't want to be a father, and I have no desire to go back that way. I forgot that her ex had told her that he didn't want kids, and they broke up because it turns out that he actually did. She said, "The next man I get involved with will be so child-free, he's gotten a vasectomy before meeting me. Period. I can't start anything with any man who wants them or on the fence. My heart can't take it." And that's so relevant. I feel that on every level. On top of that, she also got her tubes tied. So she literally cannot have kids, even if she tried to, which I love. Because again, not a lot of romance books that have that representation of a woman who has gotten her tubes tied, who has gotten a hysterectomy by choice, or even men who have gotten vasectomies. It's very hard to find books where the characters have done those type of medical procedures to prevent having kids. Then later on, Reed in his inner monologue says, "Now I'm questioning whether I want to be a parent, a very real decision that I've never thought I would have to make so soon in a new relationship, because the woman I love does not want to have them. Therefore, I won't if we stay together." After he's done all of this self-exploration, she asks him, "Do you want kids?" And he says, "I always thought I wanted them. Goldheart is a small town, and that's what you do. You get married to the first person you date, and you have a couple of kids, and you stay put. Since I met you though, I'm seeing my future differently. I want you. If that means not having kids, that means not having kids. I'm at peace with that." And she says, "I don't want you to ever resent me though," which is such a real concern to have. And he says, "Look at me. I won't, I promise." And she says, "Everyone thinks I'm selfish for the choice I've made. Everyone. I don't think it is. I also know I can't be selfish and ask you to give up your vision of your life." And Reed says, "I'm never going to find anyone like you. What we have is rare. I want to have a beautiful life with you if you will let me." And Whitney says, "I can't risk it. I can't risk you hating me for making you sacrifice or ending it in a few years because you change your mind and decide you want kids." And he says, "When are you going to believe me? I will give it up to be with you." All of that to say is that I really do love the self-exploration that Reed goes on here. And also Whitney being a child-free person, her concerns were very valid. And, you know, I have dated people before where I've had to say, you know, if having kids is something that you want, I'm sorry, this is not going to work out, because I don't want to be the reason why you end up having to give up years of your life when you could be with someone that you can start a future and a family with, you know? So I really love the representation in this book. So if you are looking for a small town, sweet romance with two authors and that journey of realizing whether or not you are child free. Definitely read Gold Rush by Jenny Bunting. I also want to say that I gave this book 5 stars. This is a really good one. All right, the next recommendation I have is Fight by Sloane St. James. Now, number one, I have to be honest and admit that I did read and buy this book because of this cover. Yeah. The artist that did this cover, I will link her down below. Perfection. Chef's kiss. If I ever write a book, I need her to do the cover because this is a work of art, babe. Yep. Yes, it is. There is a lot going on with this book. This book took me on a journey, okay? There were so many events and drama that occurred that I could not have ever predicted where this book was going to go, okay? The drama, the scandal, the mess, I really did not expect this to go where it did. But let me give you the gist of the story. This is a romance between Callahan and Prescott. So Callahan is the I need to read this because it is a mouthful. Callahan is the captain of an interagency hotshot crew of wildland firefighters. Prescott is the new EMT that just started, and she is part of the ambulance and EMT team that helps them when they're on site for these wildfires. A few years ago, Callahan lost a member of his team, and because of that, he doesn't like to get close to anyone. When Prescott starts, there's obviously an attraction between the two of them, but neither of them act upon it at all because they do work in such a close-knit environment, and a lot of it is very life or death, high stakes. They don't want to risk anything. They form a really fun friendship in the beginning of this. I really enjoyed that part of it. And also Prescott comes with a lot of baggage, and part of what unravels in this story has to do with her history. I'm not spoiling anything. If you want to be completely gagged and gooped, I would say go into this blind, because when I tell you my jaw was on the floor because I was not expecting any of the shit that happened. Because in the beginning, it starts off as this innocent coworker type of forbidden romance, and then it just spirals into something crazier. And I was just like, what am I reading? You just gotta strap in and hold on for the ride. I also will say there was a third act breakup, and I do not think at all that Callahan groveled nearly as much as he needed to. And I hate that about romance books where the male main character fucks up so badly and the female main character takes them back in the span of 2 chapters. I'm like, girl, I get that we have to end the book in the next 30 pages, but what? You need to make him beg and crawl on his knees through glass and lava before you even think about taking this man back. Yeah, so I will say that pissed me off, especially with everything that went on. That pissed me off. That sure did. So keep that in mind. But they do have a really quick conversation about not wanting kids. They're eating dinner at this local diner in the small town that they are in. Callahan asks her, do you want kids someday? Prescott says, honestly, not really. I like kids, but I never had the desire to have my own. Being a parent isn't something I need to feel fulfilled. Callahan, in his inner monologue, says, it was a long time ago that I gave up the idea of having children, but I love being an uncle. Prescott asks, what about you? Callahan says, I have the winters off, but during the fire season, I'm gone for weeks at a time. It doesn't exactly lend itself to convenient parenting. I'm not saying we couldn't make it work, but it would be more challenging. And Prescott says, we? Callahan says, I mean, whoever my partner is. Teddy and her husband, Logan, which are his friends, have 2 kids. I love being an uncle. It's the best of both worlds. And Prescott says, that's really sweet. If you didn't have the job that you do, would you want a family? And he says, maybe, hard to say. I'm not sure if I would or not. It's not something that I've been dreaming about my whole life or anything. I'm happy with the direction my life is going right now. And that's that. Yeah, if you want a hot firefighter and a EMT with a very insane background and lots of drama, lots of mess, read Fight by Sloane St. James. The next recommendation I have is The Lumberjack by Susan Stoker. This one, I will say a little bit of an asterisk on this one because it is the 4th book in a series. There is a lot of background info that you probably have to know before you get into this book. I didn't know going into this that this was child-free because I started from book 1. I just wanted a romantic suspense type of series to binge. And so I started it not knowing that this last book was going to be a child free by choice book. Had I read this book just on its own without reading the rest of the series, I probably wouldn't have gotten a lot of the story and like what was going on. So just know that going in. But you follow JJ and the rest of his team of ex-soldiers, and they've decided to live out the rest of their life in a small town, and they started a lumberjack business together. April is the female main character in this book, and she is the sole admin person for their business. So she keeps the company running. Basically, she does all the paperwork, all of the finance, all of the scheduling, all of that. She does. She's a boss bitch in that way. Technically, it's a little bit of a forbidden romance because JJ is April's boss, essentially, but they're all close friends. And she is actually a few years older than JJ. So it's a bit of a reverse age gap. The two of them have had feelings for each other, and the rest of the group can tell that they do, but neither of them are willing to admit it, and also neither of them really see that the other person likes them. But it's a really good setup. Now, there is a bit of suspense in this too. Like I said, it's a romantic suspense series. And in the beginning of this book, April gets into a car crash. And this is not a spoiler, it's literally in the summary of the book. And she gets amnesia from it. I was a bit disappointed by this book because in the first 3 books, we see all of the tension and the angst between them. But as I said, nothing happens between them. And then in their book, I was really hoping for all of that tension and longing and yearning to build into something really great. But because of her accident and her amnesia, JJ basically confesses to her that he's been in love with her this entire time. And that whole journey of them building that relationship doesn't even happen. And so I was a bit disappointed by that because I wanted the build up to it. And instead I just got the relationship. So I was a bit disappointed in that because they were teased for so long. And then it just, in the first like 20%, all of that happened. But I did appreciate that they were a child free by choice couple, especially because April was the older woman in the relationship. The conversation about having kids or not actually comes up when they're talking about birth control. And April admits to him, I had an ovarian cyst when I was in my 20s. I had to have it removed along with my ovary and fallopian tube. Only on that one side, but as a result of another cyst found the next year on my remaining ovary, my doctor put me on the pill. I've been on it for over 20 years now. It's highly unlikely that I can get pregnant anyway because of my age and all of the other factors. She also admits to him that she doesn't really want kids, and he's totally fine with being an uncle to all of the kids that his friends are going to have. And in the epilogue, I was prepared for them to somehow end up with babies just because of how it usually is. But JJ says in the epilogue, the best thing about being an uncle was being able to give the kids back to their parents. He wouldn't trade the time that he got to spend with them for anything. And so they don't end up having any kids. Thank God. If you want a romance with a little bit of suspense and then the amnesia trope, if you love the amnesia trope, then definitely read The Lumberjack by Susan Stoker. All right, the last recommendation that I have for you guys is a book that I read most recently. I will say that I did put it down. So this is a soft DNF only because this book is 500 pages. I don't think any romance book in general needs to be over 300 pages, especially a small town romance. Let that be known that I did not finish this book yet. I do plan on finishing it eventually. I just put it down for the meantime because it was a bit long and there were other books that I wanted to focus on, but I do eventually want to get back to this and finish it. I just haven't finished it yet. Know that going in, but it is Caught in the Axe by Daphne Elliott. This one also is a bit taboo. I wouldn't say taboo. I wouldn't say forbidden either, but it is, maybe it is a little bit taboo because this is a romance between Owen and Lila is Owen's younger brother's ex-girlfriend. I really enjoy this one because it is the typical character comes from the big city, moves back to a small town, but hates small town living and wants to move back. And you know how in those tropes, the person that comes from the big city always ends up staying in that small town and leaving their big city life and career just to live in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. And usually it's a woman and she stays in a small town for a man. Yeah, this is not that. And I was very, very, very shocked and surprised that this is how it eventually unfolds. Because, okay, so I didn't finish reading it, but I did kind of see spoilers because I wanted to know how it ends. Owen lives in Boston and he loves his city life, loves his career over there. And he left his small town a long time ago. His family has a small town business, as many usually do, but his dad was really shady about the family business and definitely did some illegal stuff. And so because of that, the family business is failing. And his brothers that have stayed behind to help out with the business really need help. So he ends up going back. And I remember in the first chapter, he's like, I'm going back for, was it 2 or 3 weeks? And I'm going back to Boston the second I can. Like, he does not want to stay in a small town. He left for a reason. And in my head, I'm like, that's how they all start. And they end up staying because of the small town romance. And once he gets there, his other brother, who is not the ex-boyfriend, but his other brother, decides to hire him an assistant to help him with the business. There's a lot that needs to get done. And his brother knows that Owen will need an assistant to keep things in order. The assistant that he hires is Lila. Lila wants to get her master's degree, so she is trying to pick up as many jobs as she possibly can so she can save up money and move out of their small town and go to a very good university. Specifically, she wants to go to New York City because that's where her friends are going, and she wants to stay with them and wants to experience life in the big city. And she's actually taking this job on top of the other jobs that she has. And Owen is paying her really well, so she is very excited to become his assistant. And Owen notices that she looks familiar, but he can't put his finger on it why she does. And then he realizes that that's his little brother's ex-girlfriend. And there is a huge attraction between them in the beginning. They have a lot of good chemistry in this. I will say that I think the reason why this book was a lot longer than it needed to be was because of the excessive business jargon. There was a lot of conversations and scenes that had to do with the business, which I guess if you are reading this and you've never read or don't know anything about small town businesses, it is beneficial and educational to know. But for me, I wasn't really focused on that. That wasn't the reason why I was reading this. But of course, the romance is a bit forbidden because they are boss and employee, and also because that is Owen's little brother's ex-girlfriend. But they can't deny the attraction to each other. Like I said, they had really good chemistry in this. The romance wasn't really the issue for me in this book. It was kind of everything else. So anyway, Owen does eventually want to move to Boston because this is a temporary thing. And Lila, of course, does intend on leaving the small town to venture out on her own and get her education at a university in a bigger city. The fact that they both wanted to leave the small town and pursue life outside of that small town together was such a breath of fresh air for me. Again, I didn't finish it, but I did see spoilers. And in the end, they both do leave. And there's a conversation about, Lila going to New York City. She was nervous about their relationship and how they were going to keep it up. And Owen was like, you do know that Boston is a very short flight away from New York City. And we have FaceTime, and it's not like we're never going to see each other again. And he was like, we can do long distance for as long as it takes while you're at school. That's not a big issue. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you. Finally, characters who understand that if you really want to be with that person, you won't let distance come between you. Like, it's not impossible in this day and age. Anyway, so they are drinking wine and talking about Lila's previous relationship with Owen's brother. And Owen says, it's good to see him so content, even if I don't get to see him as much. But this is what he wants. He's a big family guy, talking about his younger brother. Lila says, that's actually one of the reasons Cole and I didn't work out. And Owen says, what do you mean? She says, he wanted a very specific kind of life. Marriage, lots of kids, house up here in Maine. And Owen says, and you don't want that. Lila says, I don't. I guess I thought that once he got a pro contract, because I believe he is a hockey player, we'd settle in the city and I'd build my career and we'd travel in the off season. But then it started to look like hockey wasn't going to work out, and he wanted to talk about having kids soon and buying a house up here. My mom had me when she was in high school. You know that. For every single minute of my life, I've been aware of just how much of a burden I was. And he says, you are not. And she says, logically, I know that. My mom has never made me feel as though she didn't want me, and she has devoted her life to caring for me. But I've seen the toll it's taken on her. She put her own life on hold for me. My whole life, the world has just assumed I'd get married and have kids, be some guy's wife and some kid's mom. It took me a long time to realize that I get to call the shots and decide what's right for me. The real me, not some idealized version. And I'm good with that. And then she tells him, I realize that's probably a deal breaker for you. And Owen says, can I be honest? And she says, always. And he says, I don't want kids either. He says, I want a partner. I want to be one half of that kind of family. I want nights where we cook meals together and vacations, just the two of us. I want someone to come home to, someone to share my life with, maybe a pet or two. But kids? Nah, probably not for me. She says, really? And Owen says, my family is huge. Our house was pure chaos. I guess I've never felt the urge to create a life like that. It's not to say that I don't like kids. Being here these past few weeks has made me realize how much I want to be closer to my brothers and my mom. I want to work on strengthening those relationships, but I have just never had any interest in children of my own. And that's on, period. Okay? We love to see it. That is Caught in the Axe by Daphne Elliott. All right, those are the small town romances with child-free by choice couples and characters that I have for you guys today. Again, if you have any recommendations that I have not mentioned in this video or any of my other previous videos, please leave them down below so we can all get as many child-free romances as we possibly can. As always, I will link all of the lists and resources that I have for even more child-free recommendations for you guys outside of these videos that I'm making for you, because there are a ton out there now. So please check out the links down below so you guys can get more recommendations. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!